Okay, we hold this for me.
Sure.
All right. What is your name and occupation?
I am Mr. Lund. I am a history teacher at American Fork High School.
Okay. And how old were you when September 11th, 2001?
I was 6 years old.
How was 9/11 perceived out of the U.S. in your opinion?
Well, I was 6, so as far as I remember it, it was I remember seeing my parents being very afraid, being scared, and not knowing what was going on. I believe I was at school at the time. So I don't think, and I was too little to have them like show anything. So I don't remember like watching the news or anything as the event was happening. But I do remember that my mom was afraid. I remember that just like an overwhelming kind of sense of fear was happening while we weren't sure what was happening, if there was going to be more stuff going on later. If that makes sense. But again, I was 6, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know how much of this I've fabricated in my brain, or if I do actually remember that stuff. So
Yeah, I get you. And how would you say it affected your life?
I think that as 9/11 is now kind of a holiday, right? With Remembrance Day, that I don't know, for me, it's like that's a time in U.S. history that we feel like we are some of the most connected that we ever have been, and that we are. It's almost become like kind of a patriotic thing for me, as like I think about it and I think about what our country has gone through, some of the experiences that make our country what it is today. I think of 9/11 and I think of like what our country is capable of, because yes, we see sadness and but we're all feeling those feelings together. We're feeling the sadness together, but we're also feeling the unity that everyone needs each other. We need to rely on each other. So it shows, I really like 9/11 and to think about 9/11 because it shows U.S. resiliency to hard, difficult things, which I think is what embodies a lot of the U.S. spirit and like the U.S. kind of culture and mentality, is what I want the U.S. mentality to be, rather than when we're not in a time of crisis or a time of emergency. I don't know if I love what the United States stands for or what the United States does all the time.
Yeah.
But during times of crisis, we are more unified than it feels like a lot of countries can be.
Yeah, that's a very valid way to think about it. All right. So, I got kind of like a big picture question for you.
Okay.
Why aim for the centers of capitalism?
I know that they were looking for the most impact, to attack the place that was going to do the most impact and send the loudest message. So targeting the World Trade Center was a way to do both of those things, to attack both the United States and to attack that idea of capitalism in the West. Yeah, it was just honestly, it was a pretty clear target to have the leaders of not just the United States but of the world, as far as like economics go, all in one place on like almost a daily basis. Right? So it's like it was a pretty big target, no matter what time of day, no matter when, like what was going on in the world or whatever. Like that was always going to be a big target, just because of the way that it was. So I think that's why they just wanted to send a loud message, and yeah, that's why they targeted the World Trade Center.
Okay. Okay. What were like the far-reaching social and political ramifications of the 9/11 attacks, both like within the United States and like outside on a global scale?
Inside the United States, like we talked about in my class, we passed the Patriot Act, which allows the government to look into a lot of our private things as long as that we are related to terrorism, right? So there's some scary things that could happen because of that, but at the same time, it's all in the name of national security, right? And like I mentioned before, like we were unified on that idea that we wanted to keep each other safe, that we were okay with the government seeing stuff like that, if it meant that that our country was going to be kept safe. And then socially, I think there was just kind of for a while, there's just a general fear of, I mean, flying for one, right? If security is that intense every time we fly, yes, it's to keep us safe, but yes, to also potentially prevent us from hurting ourselves or getting injured in some other way, right? So it's like a little intense. So there's some fear there. If we have that much security, there must be some fear behind it. And then I think, as far as like nationally as it goes, I think there's just kind of this. Unfortunately, there's a global misunderstanding of what it means to be a Muslim. So I think that's this act of a few individuals made it really hard and difficult for the world to accept Muslims as good human beings, as I know they are, but like they. So it's just kind of an interesting dynamic and an idea that started to exist because now people think 9/11, oh, they think Muslims attacked the United States. Well, yes, they were Muslim, but they were extremist Muslims, right? So I think that's one of the big worldwide ramifications is there's a mistrust of that religion, which is a good religion, but it's not but like these extremists don't represent it well.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, so I think that's probably one of the biggest international ramifications is that mistrust.
All right. Thanks for your time. I'm gonna ask you one final question. What do you think they were trying to say? Like, what was the message that, like, you think?
I think the message was that they are a threat, that they need to be taken seriously, and that they should be listened to. So as far as that was the attacker's message, I would say is that they were doing this for a religious purpose to elevate themselves as far as their religion goes, as far as their extremist views on their religion goes. But I think it was in general to help or to try to make people feel terror, to make people feel scared in their own places, in their own houses, in their own homes, in their own nations, right? I would probably say that it was mainly fear that they wanted to convey through this attack.
Okay. Thank you for your time. You're welcome.